Hey there. I'm excited to announce this to you today. This is what you've been waiting for in your spiritual quest. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time, and I'm finally ready to announce it that it's ready to go. It's the Grief to Growth Community Circle. Now, this is a sanctuary where like-minded souls are united in their journey through grief and towards personal transformation. It's more than just a place. It's a beginning. It's a commitment to growth and understanding. Here you're finding not just a community, but you're entering a circle of trust and depth. You're going to engage with interactive coursework. You'll dive into exclusive podcast episodes and partake in discussions that illuminate the path from mourning to empowerment. This is a realm where every question is honored and every individual's journey is validated. To be part of this exclusive circle, visit us at grieftogrowth.com/community or look for the chat icon at the bottom of every page on the main website. Remember that entry is a privilege because I want to ensure that every member is as dedicated and genuine as you are. You must apply to join, but the journey within is worth every step. So go ahead and join us today. Check it out, grieftogrowth.com/community, and I look forward to seeing you there.
Hi there. Welcome to Grief to Growth podcast. Your host is Brian Smith, spiritual seeker, best-selling author, grief survivor, and life coach. Brian believes that the worst tragedies of life provide the greatest opportunity for growth. Brian says he was planted, not buried, and he is here to help you grow where you've been planted by the difficulties in life. In each episode, Brian and his guests will share what has helped them to survive and thrive. It is his sincere hope this episode helps you today.
Hey everybody, this is Brian Smith back with another episode of Grief to Growth. And today I've got with me Conrad Leslie, and I'm going to read Conrad's introduction, then we're going to have a conversation like we always do. Conrad is an engineer with over 30 years experience in environmental, geotechnical, geophysical, and oceanographic projects. He's held upper management positions at some of the largest engineering firms in the USA, managing multi-million-dollar projects for the U.S. Navy and international clients, before he opened his own firm, Q&S Engineering, in 1999. Conrad had a proven track record of success, documented by letters of commendation from repeat clients, and was known for developing innovative solutions. His professional career was great until his world collapsed when his only child, Nicolas Leslie, became one of the 86 victims of the ISIS terrorist attack in France on July 14, 2016. Ever since then, Conrad has been on a journey to find meaning and purpose in life, having found comfort and strength in the messages and synchronicities that are just too special to be considered random coincidences. Conrad is on the mission to learn more about the ultimate meaning of reality and shares experiences in order to bring hope to the world, to others, one person at a time. And with that, I want to welcome my friend Conrad Leslie.
Oh, thank you very much, Brian. First of all, I just want to thank you. You've been a very important part of our life, too. I know that, your daughter, Shayna, she transitioned 1 year before our son. And I just commend how you were able to pick up and start helping others immediately. Something that, for 1 year, we were just like stayed home and cried basically the whole time. It was just the darkest part of our anything that we could experience.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to remember. I was trying to think before we got on the call how long I've known Paola. It's been at least a couple of years, probably 3 years. When did she become part of Helping Parents Heal? Do you remember?
I think probably like around 2017 or 18.
Yeah, so I've known Paola for quite a while, and I've seen Paola's journey. I don't know you as well. I've seen you on the video you guys did on Swedenborg Life, which was awesome. So do you remember the name of the episode?
It was Angels After Terrorism.
Yeah, Angels After Terrorism. So for anybody listening, if you're familiar with Swedenborg Life, or if you're not, look up Swedenborg. That's SWEDENBORG and Life on YouTube, and look up Angels After Terrorism. You guys did a great job on that episode.
Thank you very much.
And as I said, Conrad, I don't know you as well, but you and I have, I think, a lot in common, both being engineers and having kind of a materialistic, somewhat worldview before these things happened, and really being opened up afterwards. But to get started, what I'd like for you to do is tell us about yourself, tell us about Paola, and tell us about your son, Nick.
Well, for me, I was just a very technical person. I was always trying to solve problems for my clients. I actually live their problems. And I would dream solutions. They would just come out of my head, almost like, later on I heard that perhaps, it comes from from another, from the astral plane or whatever, like Nicolas Tesla and all these other people would get inspired. But I dedicated all that creativity to my clients. I really never thought anything about the afterlife. I never believed in mediums. I lived a very simple life. What was real, what was in front of me. I would always tell Nicolas, I go, Nick, we live in this rock and we go around the sun and each turn is 1 year. And I said, some people get, 3 turns, 2 turns, other people get 100. But I would say, but in the long term, it just doesn't matter. It's so irrelevant. I said, your time here is just a ride if you look at it like a merry-go-round. So I really looked at it, very, materialistic and not in a monetary perspective, but it really what was in front of me, what was solid and stuff. And then, and Paola, she was just a wonderful, the best mom that anybody could ever hope for my son. And, she would bring Nicolas hot lunches to school. His friends would complain to their moms, hey, how come Nicolas gets a hot lunch? She was a stay-home mom and just dedicated her life just to, raising Nicolas. And all the friends would come over our house and would gather there. Paula would cook up pasta and I would take the kids out to the beach because I worked a lot out of my home. So I would teach them how to surf. And I can just tell you that we lived this beautiful life. It was really, not that I took it for granted, but I didn't really realize how fortunate I was. And that it was just living in paradise, in San Diego next to the beach, and my lifestyle was just a fairy tale. And
for people that are not watching this on YouTube and can't see you, I mean, you guys are like 3 models too. I mean, you and Paola and Nick, like beautiful people living a beautiful life in San Diego and paradise. So I just want to kind of set that up for people to understand where you're coming from.
I'll tell you, it still eats me up inside though, to think that was I just pretentious or was I just naive to think that my life would just keep on being the way it was? Because I had everything solved. I had a retirement plan and I had a plan. My goal was always to set Nicolas up. I came with 2 immigrant parents and, they couldn't give me a lot, but they gave me the most important thing, which is love and an education. And I just wanted to set Nicolas up so he could reach for the stars, but in case he fell or something, he would be able to have a foundation that he wouldn't have to worry about his retirement. So I worked diligently to create, long-lasting investments and stuff to pass to him. And Nicolas was just like the greatest kid that I could ever, have expected or hoped for or anything. I took him skin diving, with snorkels at 3 years old up in Aruba. He learned how to become a scuba diver at 8 years old and diving. He used to love to dive with sharks. His goal was to dive with every single shark out there. And he dove with about 8 of them. He learned how to kite surf and he became, I think he learned how to kite surf around 9 years old and became a kite surfing instructor at 17. And he was one of those kids that was like really focused on everything he did, like his tricks that he did on snowboarding, kite surfing or whatever. He wouldn't stop until he perfected. And he was the same way about his schooling. Sometimes, he would like decorate his paper, with the cover, with art. And I was saying, Nicolas, you're not being graded on that. What are you doing? It's like, Dad, I just want to do a good job. Or sometimes we'd go up to the mountains to go skiing and all of a sudden it would dump powder. And I'd say, Nick, let's just play hooky a day. And he goes, Dad, if I do, I'll fall behind, So he was like that kind of a kid. Yeah. And it was like an enigma, because he was like a really big guy. He was like, 6'3", 190 pounds and played lacrosse, football. And yet he had another side where he was like really creative. And in fact, in his junior year in high school, he quit the lacrosse team to join the speech and debate team, which he just got more involved in politics. And then that was the end of me, obviously, because I could never debate with him about anything. He would always win. I still remember in college when he went to UC Berkeley. And I remember that, I had a budget for him. And I would say, well, Nick, now you're a college student, you got to eat, ramen and college food and stuff. And he goes, Dad, aren't you kind of being a hypocrite? You raised us, your mom and I, we raised you to, like organic food, to eat really healthy, to take care of your health. And now you're trying to cut me off, these things. And I was like, so it was just like and then suddenly when it just ended so abruptly, I'll tell you, we went from heaven to hell. I've never experienced the depths and darkness, and just when I thought that things couldn't get any worse, the fact to see my wife kind of spiraling down into insanity, was even worse. It's like my pain would get reflected in her eyes, and for me to see her and not be able to do anything.
Yeah.
As an engineer, I was always solution, and then as a son of an immigrant, I always had thought, not to be sexist, but the father took care of the family, and I felt like I let my family down.
Yeah.
I failed to protect my son, and now I failed to do anything for my wife, because I could see her, spiraling down, darker and darker. And I just wanted to lift her up, but I couldn't. And every time I would try to help, I was making things worse. And then, and I guess that's how we grieve differently. Sometimes now I've learned that when she's having a day like that, I just like back off a little bit and let her experience what she's experiencing. But before that, I was always trying to find a solution. And the same tools that made me successful in my career just worked completely against me. Before I was all about being confident and there's always a solution. Don't focus on the problem. Don't roll over like a puppy dog and just accept no.
Right.
Solve it, figure it out, make it happen. And I went nuts trying to figure out what happened. How did it happen? Just the timing, because, it happened to Nicolas in Nice. He was admitted to this special program, a study abroad program. It's called the European Innovative Academy, where kids compete to come up with an app. And then whoever wins gets funded. There's, I think Google's part of it and all these other companies. And he was there just one night with his group of friends, just walking down the promenade. And this man that was just confused as an ISIS person, just ran a barricade and took a truck and used it into a weapon of mass destruction and, running over, 86 people. And I always think like, on the promenade, there's like a lot of dog poop. And I go, if he would have just like stepped in something, and he would have just stepped and stopped for 3 seconds just to wipe his foot down, he would have not been at that space and that time. And then I started just thinking about time and destiny, thinking like that everything that he did, made him go to that specific place and time.
Yeah.
If he didn't study, he wouldn't have done good in school. If he didn't do good in high school, he wouldn't have gone to Berkeley. If he didn't do good there, he wouldn't have gone to this program. If he didn't make the decision to maybe have a beer or something before he left, he would, so everything that he did brought him to that space and time. And I don't have any answers. I went crazy, trying to find out, is it destiny? Was it just coincidence? Was it just, and finally, I just realized that the best path for me, which was the hardest thing that I've ever done, was really surrender. Surrender to the fact that I'll never know. That all I do know is that something happened that was really terrible from my perspective. And I like to think that it for Nicolas, it's something else. It's something grander, and based on all the signs that he's given us and all the indications, I strongly believe that.
Yeah, well, you touched on so much there. I want to kind of go back over. One of the things is I don't get to talk to very many men. Not many men in Helping Parents Heal, not many men in this whole field of afterlife studies. But, I just relate so much to what you said about, not being able to protect our families. And no matter what it is that causes, their demise. In my case, it was my daughter, down the hallway. And she had a heart condition that led to her passing. But you think as a father, I'm supposed to take care of this. I'm the fixer, right?
Yeah.
And I'm the protector. And then when you look at your wife, after this happens, and you're like, okay, what can I do to fix this? So it could be a very, helpless feeling that we have. I think, as men. Yeah. So you mentioned that you and Paola grieve or were grieving differently. How has that changed over the years? It's coming up on 4 years now. How have things developed?
Well, I think Paola, I guess quicker than I, got into the spirituality, started, speaking, looking into mediums, and she found Helping Parents Heal, and, listening to your Zoom meetings versus me. I just went in more, dug into the science part of it, which even though I did a lot of science work, using, sound to estimate the depth of bedrock and stuff in geophysics, it was more like classical physics and had no idea about quantum mechanics except just for the math, that it was, very difficult to do, but it helped us, develop formulas for electricity and for all these great things that we use. But I never really knew about the strangeness of quantum mechanics until we came back from France after, after it happened. And I went into Nicolas's room and I saw some documents. He was writing like a screenplay, and he was writing about quantum mechanics and quantum physics and about entanglement and superposition. So I started diving into that and just I was trying to find Nicolas through physics versus Paolo was trying to find Nicolas through spirituality. And I think at the end we all went kind of in separate ways. I dug deeper and deeper. My rock stars became, physicists, from Stanford, like Leonard Susskind, Sean Carroll, Brian Greene. Those became my heroes. Paolo's heroes became, mediums and stuff, and people that, had out-of-body experiences. And I think that eventually we did kind of converge in that we found out that, that spirituality and kind of physics kind of like blend and some point where they both becomes philosophy in a way, because after it's all these theoretical physics, after a point, multiverses and, holographic universes, things that cannot be proven, for instance. We have formulas, we believe the math says it is, but, how do you prove it? Is there anything that could be proven? But I think at the end of the day, we kind of like combined, and I kind of like went over, I guess, to her side, and she kind of came over to my side, and we kind of blended into this, I guess a new reality that we were in, and we found that we could find Nicolas through spirituality and through the weirdness of quantum mechanics, thinking back, if particles could be entangled and could be separated, light years away and immediately communicate with each other, what about the bond that love makes? Those cells, they came from Paola's inside and it was part of us, and the love bounded us. So I feel like we're still connected. If things could be in a superposition, that just blows my mind how, things, in the smallest scales, the subatomic world could be a wave function that could exist in multiple places at once, as per, like the double slit experiment could prove and everything. So if that strange kind of stuff could happen, why is it strange to believe that there is an afterlife? Why is there strange to believe that our consciousness could kind of be uploaded like in a cloud, let's say, of data or something like a global collective consciousness? So even though I don't have the answers and I fear that I'll never will, it made me, I guess it reassured me that it could happen. And that's what I believe in.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey there, something I want to tell you about today. My podcast platform, Buzzsprout, has recently made it easier for me to allow you to support me financially. Go to www.grieftogrowth.com/subscribe. That's grief2growth.com/subscribe. And once you're there, you can sign up to support me financially. Now, you can do it for as little as $3 a month, or of course, as much as you'd like. If you do that, you'll get access to bonus episodes, and you'll see those in the regular feed. They'll have a lock on them. But when you become a subscriber, you'll actually get access to your own private feed, and you'll be able to listen to the regular podcast along with the bonus podcast for the subscribers. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for sharing the podcast. And I want to thank those of you who support me financially. Have a great day, and on to the episode. Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I've kind of the same thing. I think that I look at physics and spirituality now. It's all one reality, and it's different ways of approaching this one reality. And my personal belief is what we call the supernatural is just what we don't understand yet. But as you're right, you look at like some of the things that Einstein said, like time is an illusion. I mean, what does that mean? It seems very real to us, right? Or what Max Planck said, that consciousness precedes the material, that consciousness is fundamental. And our materialistic scientists have completely forgotten all those things and said, well, it's all just what we can see, feel, touch, right? But then quantum mechanics comes along. So I'm tracking with everything that you said, and it's certainly interesting that you and Paola took different approaches and kind of went around to come back to
Right.
kind of the same place.
That's right. Absolutely. And it helps me and stuff, it's like whenever I have a doubt, I always fall back to Einstein's special theory of relativity, that the present, the past, and the future are all happening now. It's just the perspective of that all things are happening at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically I say to myself, well, and I know it's kind of like a cop-out because I still firmly believe in an afterlife, but my backup moment is like, well, all things are happening now. So that means that I'm still with Nicolas right now. Nicolas is being born right now. We're snowboarding right now. All those things, it just keeps on going. Just like, it's just based on what you experience as your now moment. And as Einstein said, that could change. Your time ticks differently based on your proximity to a gravitational source or your speed, which just kind of blows me away, but it's proven, that's why our satellites, we give them time corrections because our clocks out in space are affected by less gravity and therefore tick at a different rate. And if we didn't put in those time corrections, our GPSs would be way off. And they've proven, flying, atomic clocks around the world and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they show that time ticks differently. So, I do believe that I'm still, I guess, my fallback position that I feel super confident, is that everything's happening right now. And I'm still with Nicolas and I'm still enjoying it. And now some of the new theories like the multiverse, from Sean Carroll and Hugh Everett, that they expanded on, they're saying that every time that we experience a quantum event, we split and part of us, gets connect with one reality and the other part connects with the other realities, and therefore there's another reality where I am still with Nick and Nick didn't go to Nice or Nick left a little later and everything's fine. And I'm still, working, trying to pay for his college and everything's all, the way I guess the way I would have liked it to be.
Yeah. Well, all those things are what they do tell us. And even though I don't understand them, what they tell me, as you said earlier, there's infinite possibility. There's things are possible that we weren't aware of with classical physics. So classical physics, we all said, okay, well, we're just this accidental, product of an uncaring universe. We're a biological robot in a meat suit. There's no such thing as a soul or a spirit. We're born and we die, and that's it. But these things don't fit in with what science is finding out about consciousness right now. Scientists, they can't even tell us what consciousness is. They can't tell us why it exists. There's it shouldn't. I mean, there's no reason to believe that as material things get more and more complex, that consciousness should arise out of that. And what is it? And what is it? And then when you really think about it, what do we have besides consciousness? That's all you and I have is our consciousness. Right. Everything we experience is through that consciousness.
Correct. And now, in fact, I was just reading another book, and it was about biocentrism. Mm-hmm. And it was talking about how everything that we really see is not even there. That everything that we see is just really photons of light that ricochet off objects. They go in through our eyes, and then they get converted into a chemical electrical signal. Right. And they get, gets created in the back of our heads. Right. So really, that who knows? I guess that's a further evidence that, we could just, it's all about the consciousness.
Yeah. So, it's really, like I said, it's fascinating to talk to you and talk to someone that kind of gets into this stuff kind of the way that I do, because I don't understand it. I'm reading this stuff, the quantum physics, but it just blows my mind. And it really goes back to what philosophers and frankly, theologians have told us for hundreds of thousands of years, as far as who we really are. But with you, you've had some really special experiences besides just all this theoretical stuff. I mean, Nick, you sent me a document called Gifts from Nick, which is just full of, things that synchronicities you've gotten from Nick. And what I really like about it, Conrad, is you come from, again, it's not a woo-woo perspective, because everything that you've talked about, more than one person experienced, and it's evolved with, and so you've got people that were there and evidence. So why don't you take us through some of the signs that Nick has sent you?
Absolutely. And like I said, I still haven't figured out how they come, but I call them gifts from Nick because they come to us at the right moment. And the message is so intense that I just cannot accept them as random coincidences. I've had my share of random coincidences, like meeting somebody in a strange place, like, hey, what are you doing here? But these things were intense. And I think maybe perhaps the first one that we experienced was one that I didn't believe in at first. They held a vigil at UC Berkeley for Nick, and while we were in France. And everybody was gathered at, I think, Sproul Hall, where they had the first amendment demonstrations and everything, big gathering.
Mm-hmm.
And a falcon flew over the heads of the crowds. And one of the parents that were there, their son went to school with Nicolas, and our colors for school at Torrey Pines were the Falcons. That was the name of it, the Torrey Pine Falcons.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, I think it was a sign. And I was like, what does a falcon have to do with my son being, taken, by this ISIS guy, and I was like almost, like in shock a little bit, I just didn't accept it. And it wasn't until his high school, Torrey Pines, called me up and they asked me if I could show them a photograph, if I could send them a photograph of Nicolas wearing Falcon colors. Mm-hmm. So I went upstairs and I started looking through all those old photos. And I had thousands of photos, he was our only kid, and, I was like nuts with the camera. And Brian, it was the most hurtful. I just couldn't do it. It felt like I was dying. Every picture that I would click and I would look at, it was like, just the pain. I could sense it. Just talking about it, my hair stands up.
Yeah, me too.
And it was like, I compared it to like doing something that you don't want to do. Like if I was in a cesspool up to my neck and had to hold my breath and dive to grab like a pearl, and that pearl was his memory. And bring it up. And I didn't care how bad and painful. I had to find it, but I was crying out loud, very loud. And at that moment, Paola heard me, and she came up saying, what's the matter? What's the matter? And I said, I'm looking for Nicolas wearing Falcon colors. And she repeated, she goes, Falcon colors. And she started crying, and we're hugging each other. And a falcon came and landed in our fence within 50 feet of us and stood there looking at us, like just looking at us. And we stopped crying, and we were like in shock. And even though, Falcon didn't say anything, obviously, but right. I felt like a message saying, it's okay. I'm here. It's okay. Yeah. And then once we calmed down and we were like just in amazement, the falcon just flew away.
Yeah.
And we were just like shocked, And I guess, first of all, it started these signs even started before,
Yeah, I want you to, if you don't mind, would you tell me the one about the message from your mother? Because this is before Nick even passed.
Really, really strange, because like I said, I didn't believe in anything. I was raised Catholic and stuff. I wasn't practicing, but, I just believed in trying to take care of my family and trying to go on vacations with him. And my mom, I told her, she would try to convince Nicolas that there's something more. And Nicolas like, you don't understand math. You don't understand, these things. My mom was like 90 years old, but she's very active. She used to drive from LA to San Diego by herself, and very strong lady. And then one day Paula and I were walking. Nicolas is in college. We're watching a comedy on TV, and Paula got up to use the restroom. And as she walked back from the bathroom, in our hallway, we had this little area where I had a couple of trophies from my mom. My mom was like a really famous Spanish dancer, and she won these awards. And she gave me some of the books that she had and some of the photos, and I had it there because every time she came over and she didn't see them, we'd get in trouble. Don't you care about your mama? And then all of a sudden, when she got close to that area, Paula let out a scream. And I said, Paula, what's the matter? And she goes, I don't know. I felt like you were hiding and you startled me. And I said, I'm here in the couch. What are you talking about? So she came in, she sat down in the couch, and then we started continuing the movie. And all of a sudden she kind of like yanked back and grabbed me. And she goes, I just got a message. She says, tell Nicolas that there's more to life. There's life after death. He said, there's more to life after life. Just
wow.
Like and I looked at her and I go, Paula, you are so weird. I said to her, I go, where did you come up with this stuff? And I laughed it off, and I was laughing. She started laughing, and we continued the movie. And about maybe less than 10 minutes after that, we get a call from a police officer that it says my mother had just been admitted to the hospital, and she had transitioned. And we were like shocked, not because of the message, just the fact that my mom had passed, it was like shocking to us, and it was like, And we completely forgot the message. We didn't know what to do. We weren't prepared. You never prepare for these things, and so we had to, make arrangements. And later on her memorial, Paolo and I had a big debate. We had, well, do we tell Nicolas what my mom said? We realized. And I said, at first I said, no way. I go, we're going to freak him out. He's in school. Things are already, challenging and stuff. That's the last thing you want to tell some kid that. But then we realized the message was so direct and so direct to Nicolas that I felt, I think we have to. And we did. And Nicolas played it off pretty casually. He's like, But later, I guess he had really, started thinking. He was a very bright kid, and he started reading about spirituality, about lucid dreams, about afterlife. Because before, Nicolas thought that, all these experiences are really just DMT being released in your brain, and it doesn't really happen. It's a figment of your imagination. And then all of a sudden, we found all these books that he had. He was reading all these, physics books about, reality and about, helping yourself, thinking positive, tapping into the astral plane, all these things that he never really discussed it with us. But in a way, I feel now that my mom kind of like prepared us and prepared him, for what would happen. And I guess time is differently for people that have transitioned.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi there. I'm really excited to tell you about my latest ebook. It's 4 lessons that you can learn from the near-death experience without going through all the trouble of dying to learn them. I've been studying NDEs for several years now. I am completely convinced that not only are they 100% real, but that there's some very universal wisdom that we can get from the near-death experience. And I've distilled that down in this book into 4 short lessons. And I've also given you all the reasons why I believe that NDEs are absolutely real. So go to www.grieftogrowth.com/NDE lessons to pick it up for free. www.grieftogrowth.com/NDE lessons. I hope you enjoy it. Yeah. So this was about 2 years before Nicolas passed. Is that right?
Probably about a year. One year exactly.
Wow.
And it was terrible. First my mom passed, and within a year, then before that, then after that, my dad passed, and then Nicolas, and it was like 1, 2, 3, and just devastated. But still, with that message. And I didn't recognize the power of that message until I started getting synchronicities, and like that, we've had some ones that are just blowing me away, like after the Falcon one, I had another one that just was even more bizarre, Brian. When we were in Nice during his vigil, his friends had a picture of Nicolas and they blew it up. And I refer to the story like the postal service, because they built, I guess they blew up a good picture of him, possibly, I'd say maybe like 3 feet by 2 feet photo. And they gave it to us. So somehow we made sure that we were able to fit into our suitcase. We got it in. And as soon as we got back home, we hung it on the wall. But I didn't like it. Every time I walked by that photo, I would cry. And I would cry because it would hurt me so much, because I needed more. I go, every other photograph of Nicolas in our house is just full. Our whole stairs were just full of like him being little, diving first, doing this, progressing then into like his adulthood. And but that was the only photograph that I had, and so big that I had not taken. So since I didn't take that photograph, I didn't know. All the other photographs, I knew exactly what we were doing. We were at the beach that day. We were eating this. Nicolas is smiling because of this. You were there. I was. All right. Okay.
Sorry about that. We had a little technical difficulty. I think Nick jumped in there. Go ahead, Conrad.
So basically, I was looking at this photograph that I don't know should I go back to the beginning or?
Yeah, you were saying this photograph that they had taken and blown up, and you all the other photos in your house, you were about there.
Correct. And so we had this photograph hung in the house, but I didn't like it because it hurt me. And every time I walked by, I cried. Because he had a beautiful smile. He was in a beautiful place. He looked really happy, but I didn't know what I needed more. I go, is this like the last photograph of Nicolas? And I need more. All the other photographs I had taken, all the other photographs I knew, all the background story, what he was doing, what we ate, where did we go afterwards? What did we do before? And because of that, I could look at those photographs and actually take a trip in my imagination, in my memory. what we had done. But this was the only one that was like, okay, it's a picture of Nick. And I would argue to Paola saying, no, I can't see it, Paola. It's hurting me too much. I said, we need to take it off. And Paola we would argue, no, this is our last, we need to have
the
it.
last
I'm like,
picture,
it
yeah.
hurts me too much.
Yeah.
And then, but she just kept on insisting. And then one day I went there and I just looked at it and I just cried out loud. And I said, Paola, honestly, man, I need more. That photo's got to go. And I kid you not, Brian, within maybe 3 minutes or less of me saying that, somebody knocked on my door. And I walked in and walked to the door, and it was a postman delivering a brown paper box. And inside this little package, I opened it up, and there was a photo album made by one of the kids that he met in France, part of the program.
Mm-hmm.
And the cover photo of the album was the same photo that I was looking at. And inside the album was notes and stories of everything that Nicolas was doing at the moment.
Wow.
So basically I go, wow, it's like, now that photo, we took that photo with us everywhere we go now, because like, I got really what I was looking for. I was looking for more details, what he did, what his friends were thinking, what was he doing, what they did. And this photo album just specifically told the whole story. Like in this photo, Nicolas Garcia would just finish a big game. And that's not the only photograph weird experience that I've had. Mm-hmm. We had another one that happened soon after that. We were really fortunate to get the support that we did, since Nicolas was a victim of terrorism. We had a special group of the FBI that helps parents or helps people victims of terrorist crimes. So they assigned this agent, and she's an agent, but she was an angel. She was with us. She'd go shopping for us, pick up prescriptions. She helped us find a therapist. She did everything for us. She was there, and it was just so weird. It's another part of the government that you never see. Her name was Becky, and I tell you that she was more of an angel than an FBI agent. She was there with us, crying with us, hugging us, just calming us down. And we were home, and we found a therapist, and they were talking to us, and they were telling us that Nicolas was in the light. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, Paola was like saying, well, what do you mean in the light? What does that mean? But the way, but Paola was like really, different. She was like really aggressive, she's never like that. She was like just combative and angry. And she's like, well, what, just kind of arguing back, saying, what do you mean a light? Like what? Like a light just hanging from the sky, just there for eternity, just like a light? Yeah. What does that mean, a light?
Right.
And as they were arguing, she's like saying, no, he's like part of the light and all this stuff. But Paola kept on falling back on just what, a light, a fixture there, just like a point. And meanwhile, I kind of like dozed off and went into my own imagination. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at another photograph that his friends had blown up of him, because they held a paddle out surf vigil in Del Mar for him, where he grew up. Mm-hmm. And the photograph was a photograph that I'd taken myself. But I took it against the sun. So basically you could see Nicolas's face barely, you could see the waves, but it was overexposed. Mm-hmm. So you really couldn't see the features of his face. I could make out that he was smiling, yet I really couldn't tell, you couldn't really see it clearly. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it was like the only photograph that I had of him kind of like big and grown up, smiling, because as a young man, they all like to do that duck face or whatever they do. They like to do that pout look. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So he had just this beautiful smile on his face, and I was like looking at the photograph, saying, God, "What a shame! I can't believe I can't see. I just wish I could actually see." And at that moment, Paola's still discussing about the light, and the therapist, which was her friend, she said, Nicolas is in the light. And at that moment, we had skylights in our living room, and it was an overcast day. And the sun, I guess, broke through the clouds, mm-hmm. shined through the skylight, and created a frame of light around his face. And the light was so intense, Brian, that in the original photo, you could see him and you see the horizon very clearly behind him and everything, perfect line. Mm-hmm. The light was so intense that it whited out the horizon and everything around Nicolas's face. The only thing that you could actually see was a perfect square around his face and his smile just shining bright.
Yeah.
We looked at it at that moment, and I happened to have my cell phone, and I just grabbed a photo of it, and then the sun just kind of like covered, and he just kind of went away.
It's amazing.
Amazing, and it was like, and thinking like, and all those moments, like, they were just like kind of confirming things, like telling us, like sending us messages saying, hey, I'm okay. There's something more, to this. You're not seeing the real picture. You're not seeing the whole thing. You're not seeing the whole thing.
But it's Conrad, as you're telling the story, and you're probably I'm going to guess you're probably thinking the same way. I'm thinking, okay, well, it's the timing of the conversation they were having, right?
Yeah.
It's the fact that it was an overcast day. It's the position of the sun in the sky. It's the position of the picture in your house in relation to the skylight.
Correct.
And all these things have to line up for time and position. Mm-hmm. Just like, Nicolas being in Nice, where the terrorist attack was.
Absolutely.
And these things happen, and you're like, that can't be a coincidence.
No, it can't. I had before it happened to me, I had like a really interesting experience too, which was like a kind of a lucid dream that I had, but it was kind of more of a visitation, and it opened up my mind to some of these things a lot more. And it was I was in bed, and I'll never forget this. Almost like it was an angel, I call it, and I never believed in angels, Brian. When I was small, I grew up in Spain, and angels to me were these fat little kids with wings that were in photos, and this being was like in the foot of my bed, probably like 7 foot, gigantic. And I just remember being frozen just in bed, just looking at it. I wasn't scared, but I just couldn't move. And I could see my feet, the tips of my feet coming out of the blanket. Mm-hmm. And I could see this presence. And I said to myself, Nick, is this you? Mm-hmm. And at that moment, this angel kind of like opened up his wings and just kind of went like this. And I feel kind of embarrassed kind of like telling this story because it seems like weird,
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. You're saying it was a dream, but in your dream you were in bed, right?
Yeah, I was in bed and looking and I just hope it just doesn't, destroy my credibility or anything, but I felt the wind in my face when he did that. And I couldn't really see his face completely, but I could see the expression. It was like, and it wasn't like a smiling thing. It was like a very intense look, like a mission, like he had a mission, And then I felt this message to say, look through the window, look through the window. Just, that's the only thing. It kept on repeating and repeating and repeating, look through the window, to the point that all of a sudden, like I was back like in my body, and immediately I got out of bed and opened up the window physically because I thought that's what the message was, to look through the window. And I was looking and I didn't see anything. And then I sat down in bed again. I dozed off and again, look through the window, look through the window, look through the window. And I got up one more time and this went on and I just kind of forgot. And it wasn't until until he told me that, and Swedenborg had written that it's good to see through the window, that we could actually open up our eyes to another reality. It's like almost peeking through the veil. Mm-hmm. And I find it really interesting that the message was look through the window instead of like look out the window. You see, now I major in the minor sometimes in these things, like sure. May, will, and can, because they're important, especially when I write a report. I'm very picky on the words. And he said, look through the window, which to me meant that to peek at this exterior reality, but from this side of the veil. Mm-hmm. Don't allow myself to go too far beyond, go out and stick my head and live that other life, that somehow I still had to be in this side, but I was able to look. And I think after having that visitation, I think that kind of opened my mind up, opened up to accepting these signs that I was getting as being real and giving them meaning, instead of just writing them off as random coincidences.
Well, Conrad, you said you hope that doesn't destroy your reputation, but you framed it as a dream, right? You didn't say it really happened. So things happen in our dreams, but I think it really happened. And I can tell you, I've had visitations from my daughter that seem very, very real. And, and well, about Swedenborg now, right? So this guy had all kinds of crazy experiences. And I understand what you're saying, and I interview people, and I was talking to a woman last week that talked about fairies, and she had written it. She was giving me her intro, and she mentioned fairies. And this is a very credible woman. She's owned a multi $1,000 business with 400 employees and 13,000 customers. And she said, yeah, but I've seen fairies. So there's a whole lot more to this world than we're aware of. And
absolutely,
when you talk about these synchronicities, and I'll have you tell one or two more if you don't mind, but you sent me a document with a bunch of them in there. They're undeniable. So we know that those things happen. So, whether this experience you had was just your consciousness or your higher self speaking to you or whatever it was, I believe it was your experience.
Well, it really helped, because if not, I would have. And I didn't click with it until later, I realized the meaning, what does look through the window means. But besides these photographs, we've had like physical things too happen to us that have just kind of blown our minds. For instance, we took our first trip, which we used to travel so much, but after this, we kind of like lost all motivation to do anything. It was really hard. And for Paola, that was her passion. She never liked anything fancy, cars or jewelry. She just liked to enjoy time with the family and spend, any money that we had, building memories. And we finally got enough nerve to take a trip out, and we went to New Zealand, and we arrived at this beautiful place called the Blue Pools, which is where two glacier rivers meet, and they create these deep water pools that are just blue, like an indigo blue, beautiful colors. And the whole riverbanks are just scattered, just the whole shoreline is with, millions of rocks, round, polished, flat rocks. And as we're looking there, we looked at the water, and the water looked so beautiful. And Paula started to cry, I'm sorry, I better tell you the beginning of that dream, that the whole scenario to kind of set it up. Okay. The night before we went there, I had a visitation from Nicolas. And it was so strange, Ryan. I was there in a place where I knew I shouldn't be, because I could recognize that I didn't belong there. And he was there with a smile, and I just was holding him, and I was saying, nope, I'm not going to let go. I'm not going back. I'm not going back. I said, I don't care. I'm staying right here. I knew that that somebody was going to kick me out somehow, that I was there with him. And then he just kind of slipped through my hands with a smile. And I was like, and I knew it was like my time to go. And before he left, I go, Nick, do you have anything to tell me? And without speaking, he just kind of communicated with me with a smile. He goes, stay with mom, move forward, and find joy in life. And immediately I woke up and I wrote it down, and I woke Paola up. I was like so excited. It was like so real. I mean, it was like I was there with him. And then the next day we went to this Blue Pool place, and we're standing there, and Paola started to cry. And I go, Paola, listen, you believe this stuff. You believe it wholeheartedly. You're the one that brought me into these odd, bizarre things, the supernatural, let's call it, So if you really are serious about what you believe, and you really want to live that life, you got to believe what Nicolas told us, to find joy in life. We have to find joy in life. We cannot live like this. This is just unsustainable. We can't do this. And she was just like sad, because we couldn't share such a beautiful spot with Nicolas. And as soon as I said, we got to find joy in life. Paola looked down at her feet, and there was a flat river rock with the letter J in a circle around it. And I do some geology work or geotechnical engineering work. So it was basically a crystalline formation that had grown in this flat rock, and the rock's about 1.5 inches, 2 inches diameter, with the letter J, in 3-dimensional, basically. So it's like it built up in top of the rock. So it wasn't etched.
Wow.
A buildup of the rock on white. The rock is like a dark gray, and this white with a J in a circle all around the perimeter of the rock. And then we looked at it because the sun at that moment, shined the light on it, and it caught our eyes, and we picked it up, and it was like joy, J for joy. And it was like, in that moment, I did something that, I probably wouldn't have done, but I went and I took a dip in that cold water because I knew that Nick would have done it. And I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to do it.
Yeah. So I think that's awesome. I think that
even some of the moves that we've had here, Ryan, the fact that, after like 20 years that we lived in San Diego, Nicolas, we grew up there, 20 years, we had friends, or my business and everything there.
Mm-hmm.
And we eventually moved out. We couldn't be in the house. It was just too sad. It was such a happy house, but we cried so much. It was so painful that we couldn't live there anymore. And we moved to a small little condo here in Hawaii. And but before all this happened, I went to Nicolas and I said, Nicolas, do you know what? I think I figured out a way where I could retire without having to sell our primary residence.
Mm-hmm.
That way I could give it to you. I go, I'm going to rent it out, and I'll keep the revenue, but the house will be yours and it'll stay with you. And that way you'll have something,
Mm-hmm.
And I was like really hoping to get this big hug from him and say, gee, Dad, thanks. You're the cool. Because that's probably what I would have said to my parents. But instead he looked at me and he goes, Dad, you don't have to worry about me anymore. And I go like, what? What are you talking about? And he goes, I'm at Berkeley. I'll be fine. He says, you guys belong in Hawaii. And I said, and because we used to always go there, for vacation to windsurf and kite surf. And I was like kind of shocked. I looked at him like smiled, and I said, well, is he just being, overconfident? Or is he just like being a young kid being kind of naive, doesn't realize the value of having a house,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of just let it go because I knew either way, it was just his way of showing love to us.
Mm-hmm.
Dad, you guys, you said sell the house and move to Hawaii, instead of giving it to me. I was like, wow. And then it didn't hit me until, he transitioned and we went back home. And the property that we moved in was an investment property. It was a condo that we had here for like almost 20 years. But we never lived it. I bought it when my business was doing really good, and then realized that I really couldn't afford to keep a second house. So we had to rent it full time. And the tenant called me up about a month after this thing happened. And he goes, I just want to give you a notice that we're moving out.
This is your rental property in Hawaii.
Yeah. And I was like so shocked, Brian, I didn't care. I said, you know what? There's just no way I'm going to deal with this now. There's no way I'm going to find another tenant, fix up this place. There's no way. I said, you know what? The bank could keep it. I don't care. It's everything's lost. And I just gave up. And the guy, the guy was kind of shocked, he goes, well, don't worry, Conrad, I'll show it for you. I'll try to, fix it up. And I was like, and that was really nice of him. And all of a sudden it clicked on me. I go, well, wow. Maybe this was like what Nicolas said, that we belong in Hawaii. And maybe we got to follow these signs, because I believe them, I believe in these signs, and they're kind of helping guide our life, And in that moment I said, I convinced Paola, and she didn't want to go. I said, Paola, maybe we should just go. We'll go there and we'll just fix up the house and we'll sell it. And then we'll get away from here, and then we'll move back to San Diego and stuff. And, after time considering, we finally decided to do it. And we hired a realtor to rent the house for executive rentals and stuff. And Brian, we didn't let the realtor in the house once. In 3 months that he had the listing with clients, every time he'd want to come over, it was like, no, this is not a good time. Because, we couldn't have people walking into our house when we're crying in the couch. I'm crying in the couch, Paola's crying in the bedroom. Yeah. There's just no way we wouldn't let even our friends in. It was like, we just wanted to be alone, and just kind of go through this thing. Finally, after 3 months, we gave up, and I told the realtor, I said, I'm sorry, this is just not going to work out. I apologize. I'm just wasting your time. And then I had a dream of Nicolas, still with his Hawaii theme, in Hawaii clothes, doing a hula dance, kind of, and, with a smile. And I still couldn't understand. It's like, well, I try to go to Hawaii, but how is this going to work, 2 days later, my next door neighbor comes over and we started talking. And I found out that I guess that they were renting next door. And he goes, yeah, my wife's pregnant. And I think we're going to need a bigger house. And I said, and we're moving out. And I said, well, mine's for rent. And immediately he goes, I'll take it. And he goes, there's only one condition. We have to be out by May 1st. That's when we gave our thing. And May 1st is when our place became empty.
Wow.
So it was like a perfect transition. And they have 2 beautiful kids. And now our house has these 2 beautiful kids, young people, 3 years old, running around, making the house happy again. That, maybe one day we'll move back and and it'll be a different place. It'll be a
Wow.
happy place again,
Yeah.
So we keep on following Nick's signs and the things that he tells us. And one of the biggest ones that he really helped me, and I know that you said you wanted to talk about that, was about forgiveness, and that really hit the spot. I read a biography that he was writing for a project in France. I guess they wanted to write about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote that having traveled so much with us, he had learned, that, there's different cultures, different perspectives, and one should never jump too quick to judge somebody,
Mm-hmm.
because you never understand really what motivates the people to do the things that they do. If you don't know the motivation, you can't really judge them.
Right.
And at that time, Brian, I had so much anger in my heart. I really wanted to go to Syria and fight, with the Kurds against the ISIS. I wanted to go there, volunteer and fight. I wanted to kill. I wanted to express my pain. I wanted to get revenge.
Yeah.
And I remember the FBI person and our therapist are talking me out of it. He's like, "No, Conrad, you can't be serious. This is like crazy, And eventually I saw a Swedenborg show, and I think Swedenborg said something about the same thing, about how motivation, how sometimes you could do something really good and you could maybe unite the whole world under Christianity, but you do it for the wrong reason, for the motivations, your own ego or something.
Mm-hmm.
You have somebody that does something very terrible, destroys the whole world, religions and everything, but he does it out of love for God, his intention. And he said that perhaps a person who did it with good motivations maybe will have an easier time, forgiving himself and living, instead of the person who did it for his own ego, So that really put me in this path to, and like I'm far from it, to be able to forgive the ISIS person who did this and caused so much pain for so many people. But at least I was able to kind of purge the hate that I had inside of me. I mean, he was like, he had become such an important part of my life. He was like, I thought about him, I dwelled about him, I hated him. And then I realized something that was pretty profound, that I realized that love is not infinite, like people say, like they say, oh, love is infinite, because I couldn't have loved my son any more than I did. I loved him with all my heart, with all my soul, I would have done anything for him. I wanted to be with him. I wanted to set him up. I wouldn't eat like the best shrimp just to give it to him or whatever. I didn't love him anymore. So then I realized that, love and the relationship between love and hate, and that somehow I was converting some of my love for my son to hate for this guy.
It's profound.
So as an engineer, I was thinking, well, if you have like a finite amount of flow and you're diverting some of it, why should I be focusing and giving hate to this guy, converting love currency to hate, and sending it over to this guy? And I just cut him off,
Yeah.
And I diverted 100% of my focus and of my love and my emotions and my thoughts to my son. And like I said, and I'm still on a path towards forgiveness. I don't know if I'll ever be able to be man enough to say to the guy, I forgive you. Even though sometimes I think of that Nick, he was also shot and taken, by the police eventually after he did all that damage. And sometimes I think that Nicolas, maybe saw him as they were transitioning and must have said, dude, that's not chill. What did you do? But maybe they communicated, and the guy was like just confused that maybe in his own perverted, sick way. And like I said, I'm sorry, I guess here I am judging, but in his own, way that was obviously mentally ill.
Well, I think, as human beings, we do judge. I mean, some things are better than others. Killing a bunch of innocent people is not a good thing. And, I've been talking to people about soul planning. They're like, well, did these people plan to do this? And if they did, does that mean it's okay? It doesn't mean it's okay. We have a set of rules on this planet. We don't try to harm people and stuff. So it's not cool. As you said, that's not chill.
That's not chill.
And forgiveness is a process. And I'm glad that you kind of went through that, because this is like the ultimate. This guy, he he takes the life of your most precious, only son, who's got all this promise. Yeah, it just doesn't get any more egregious than that. But you realize by holding on to that, you're hurting yourself. And I love the way you put that. You're diverting your energy. I want to say your love for Nicolas is infinite, but you're diverting your energy away from, what you can focus on to this guy, and so I think what you said was just profound. I appreciate that very much.
Well, when the other thing I thought too, from the guy's perspective that helped me, I go, the guy obviously had the wrong friends. I said, God, if he would have met somebody, if he would have had a friend like Nick, because this guy, he worked out, he went to the disco. He wasn't like the devoted Muslim guy that, he was like a regular guy that went and did his thing. He drank, he went to bars and everything. If he would have met Nick, or somebody like Nick, and he would have probably shared that, like his plan, somebody, a regular person would have said, dude, that's not how you do it. That's not going to help. That's not going to solve a problem. That's wrong. But instead, he had other people in his life that encouraged it, that said, hey, yes, we must avenge and do this thing, but I'm confident that Nick, as a debater, he would have probably debated with the guy and probably convinced them to do something else, to protest.
Yeah.
But create a change in a positive way instead of like creating all this harm. And then what I did also realize that even though one person created all this pain for so many people, it was like out of that pain, so many incredible people and light givers came out. Almost like if it was like a cell, like a virus in your body, and all the good cells surrounded him and surrounded me and everything, and kind of like just overcame it. Because for that action that the guy did, there's 1,000 actions that people, just strangers that we didn't know, they were in our community. They were the ones that spearheaded the foundations for Nicolas. Berkeley did a foundation just themselves, for Nicolas, called Victory of the People, which is to help people, students that study abroad. Berkeley has a lot of money, but a lot of these scholarships, they pay for your flight and your tuition, of study abroad, but they don't give you money for like beer and food. And I said, this scholarship, I wanted it to make so people would have spending money, because you go abroad and you need to have the experience, because that experience, you can have young people talking to other young people, because when you're young, you love everybody, you're like, you don't build these walls. And the more interaction with these young people with they help shape other people's minds and views and create and changes the consciousness, one person at a time. So I realized how he touched, like, some of the people that he had a lot of good friends, a lot. He was very, very popular.
Yeah.
And some of his friends, most of his friends are going to do, I guess all of his friends are going to do well, and some of them are going to do a lot better, and some of them are going to do incredible. And there'll be some people that are always, going to think of Nicolas, they have tattoos with his name and stuff. And I know for sure, Brian, that, I'm sorry, I'm kind of breaking down a little bit.
No.
But I know for sure that when the time comes for one of Nick's friends to do something, he'll do the right thing. He might be like, in politics or something, or a CEO of a company, and maybe he'll make the right decision, thinking it's the right thing to do. So.
That's wow. I gotta tell you, Conrad, I've never had as many chills going through an interview as I have talking to you today. I really appreciate it. So Conrad, I gotta tell you, it's just been so great to talk to you. I mean, like I said, I feel like I kind of know you through Paola. We do the Zooms, and I see you sometimes sitting on the couch next to her. I've only got this first time we've ever had a chance to talk face to face. I've enjoyed watching Paola's journey over the last couple of years, as she has, dealt with this stuff, and the joy in your face as you talk about your son is it's just amazing. It's just cool, really sitting with you. And you sent me this great document you put together, Gifts from Nick, and I want to offer anybody that wants to get a copy of that, send me an email, and I'll send you a copy of that. Conrad gave me permission to do that. So I'm again, I appreciate your time very much. Any last thing you want to say before we say goodbye?
No, that I think these things that happen are important, and I'm really glad that I wrote them, and I'm really glad that you offered to share them. because it's so weird how your brain will try to erase stuff that doesn't fit with your reality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so as time comes, you forget things. Like there's one last one, and we still have time. I could share with you.
Oh, absolutely, for sure.
That, and I call this one the Star Soul, and it was like a 2-part story. You know, it happened. Well, Nicolas was here, and then it got confirmation after he transitioned. We were in the car together. He came back from school, I think it was freshman year, and I could tell that something was off. You know, because you know how parents could tell that something is wrong. You know, I'm very empathic, and he said, I go, Nicolas, what's the matter? Because he wanted to go home, you know, and he didn't. We just went shopping. I wanted to go eat in a restaurant, and he goes, no, let's just go home and eat at home. And I go, no, let's go eat out. No, let's go eat home. And I go, Nick, what's the matter? And he goes, there's nothing wrong, Dad. No, nothing. He argued with me for like about 5 minutes, seemed forever, you know, and he was such a good arguer, you know. I was like, what do you do? You know, and then finally he did something that he had never done in his life. He broke down in tears. And he goes, I said, what's the matter? He goes, I don't know, Dad. He goes, I just feel like this world, it's not enough for me. Like that I don't belong here. That is too small, this whole world. And I feel the pain of other people on my shoulders. I actually feel their pain.
Wow. And
I looked at him because he was not, he was like a very happy kid. You know, we had great adventures, friends from everywhere, and I was shocked. I didn't know what to do, Brian. It was like, if you would have told me, well, I've been partying too much in the fraternity, and I'm failing school, I could have probably related to that, and I could have probably gave him some advice.
Right.
I didn't know what to do. And I just like an idiot, I played it off and I laughed. I go, what? Are you telling me you're an alien or something? And he goes, no, Dad. And then that was it, and I kind of like brushed it off the floor and didn't think anything else about it. And then once we moved here to Hawaii, one day, we were just very sad, and something inspired me or compelled me to Google exactly what he said. This world is not big enough for me. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's too small. Like I want more, and that I feel the pain of others. And as I went down all the pages, I got to a page that said star souls. And I go, what's that? And I read about it, and they said star souls are consciousness that come to help raise the consciousness of other people, and just for a brief moment to raise everybody's awareness and consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
And I go, wow, and that was pretty mind blowing. And I told Paola about it, and it didn't work to cheer her up, obviously,
Right.
But we went to the beach, and we were sitting down on a beach, looking at all these people having a great time. Everybody's like playing ball, kids are running, everybody's smiling. And I was sitting there looking at everybody going, wow, how is this? How could I be in the same place in the same time as all these people, but completely be in a completely different reality? Yeah. Everybody's having such a great time. And Oaxaca mom and my wife, I'm looking at her, she's like tearing up, crying. I'm here looking at this thing, thinking the world sucks. And everybody's like having such a great time around me. And I go, it's just not right. It's like if you're doing a job and somebody's getting paid, $150 an hour, and you're doing the same job and you're getting paid nothing or $10 or whatever. You're going, wait a minute, this is not right. I'm in the same place. How come I don't have this kind of joy? And I told Paola, Paola, let's go take a walk. She started to cry. And as we were walking, Brian, Paola said to me, what was that thing that you read? What was that thing? Star what? And I said, star soul. And I kid you not, we looked down in the ground and we found a cement star, but this big, 5-pointed star made out of concrete on her feet.
Wow.
And it was like, and we picked it up, and it was like, oh, just amazing. Like, I could come up with reasons that perhaps some kid had a mold and his dad brought cement to make stars at the beach, but it's not something that I've never encountered in my life. Something that you typically don't find at a beach,
Right.
Solid. It's about maybe 1 inch thick, and about 5 inches in width. Perfect 5-pointed, like a perfect little star, the kind of stars that they would put in your collar in school when you were a good kid. And it was at the right precise moment where I said star soul. So like I said, I don't know, like I said, my brain sometimes tries to justify these things and try to come up with explanations. And it did drive me crazy. And I finally came to the point where I said, I don't know. I'm going to call them gifts from Nick, because I feel they're from Nick, and whatever it is, I know it's intelligent, because it's able to manipulate, time and space,
Right.
I know it's compassionate because it feels our pain, man. It's like, when you feel somebody's pain and you see somebody in pain, you got to have that compassion to come up to that person, and it's like, we're pitiful, we were pretty bad, and we're still, not over it yet. Obviously, I guess you never really go over it, but
Right.
some of the times that we've gotten these gifts, we were just like sad, like really pitiful,
Yeah.
So it was definitely compassionate, and it has to do with love. And it has to do with love, because that's what brings it together, to get that message of love. And they're always positive messages, like, find joy in life, move forward. And like I said, I don't know, but it's definitely helped. All these messages have really helped me through my journey. It's gotten me where we are right now, moved out of our house, because we follow these signs, follow these messages. Because I, without a doubt, I know that there's a bigger reality. I know that I would be really foolish to think that what we see is what is out there. And I really learned something about life, that not to really judge reality or everything, the whole, by the little sliver of reality that we see. Because, we only see like one little part,
Right.
It's like watching almost like a TV very close, and you only see a pixel. So it's really easy to judge and come to a conclusion based on your little sliver. But at the end, if you back up, you'll see that the whole is perfect. And I believe in some kind of, divine providence, like,
Wow.
so we can talk about or something.
Yeah.
And just like see such a little sliver of it that it looks like chaos to us.
Yeah.
But at the end, I know that something positive came out of Nicolas's transition. And I know he'll be waiting for me and the other side when I see him. I know that without a doubt.
Yeah.
And I think the only sad thing that we have to go through is that, we'll be alone now, and sooner or later, either my wife or I will pass, and then that person will be alone.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, but what keeps us moving is that, the shortness of time, even if you have, and I think I've even heard you say this one time in one of your casts, out, 100 years is just nothing compared to geologic time or the time for the universe, for mountains to get created, volcanoes to collapse, I mean, 100 years is like it's not even a significant digit.
Right.
And anything, it's less than a second. So I really believe that there is a greater reality. I do believe in the survival of the consciousness, and that we'll be together. And I do believe that our time here, that whatever, pain or joy that you suffer, it's definitely, it's very, very short. And that there's definitely some kind of, I guess growth that you go through experiencing such a depth in the darkness of the opposite of love, kind of like that deprivation, that pain. It really helps you become a little bit more compassionate, and you could relate to people that perhaps are not doing well and stuff. Before, it's really easy to kind of like just do your own thing and just, hey, what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is a lesson, and I guess, and I'm optimistic that, we're all, changing. And I feel like my mission is like, I'm not good like you reaching out to a lot of people, but I think my goal is really just one consciousness at a time, trying to raise that.
Well, Conrad, I can't add to that. That was a beautiful summary. This has been a really just an amazing experience sitting down with you. I'm so glad you sent me the document, and we had a chance to do this. You're helping people, by living your life. By, I've told people that go through this, just by getting up every day and doing what we do, you're inspiring people. And I'm watched, Paola grow, over the years, and I've seen the things that she's doing. So again, this has been just fantastic. So thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much, Brian.
All right. You have a good day.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon. Well, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I want to make it really easy for you to reach me. So just send me a text to 31996 and simply text the word growth, GROWTH. In fact, you can right now just say, "Hey Siri," send a message to 31996, and when Siri asks you what you want to send, just say growth. You can do the same thing with OK Google. Thanks a lot. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks for listening to Grief to Growth. Brian hopes that you find this episode helpful and will come back for future episodes. Brian's best-selling book, Grief to Growth, Planted Not Buried, is a great resource for anyone who is coping with grief or knows someone who is. If you enjoy the podcast and would like to support it, there are 3 things you can do to help. The first is to share the podcast with someone that you think it will help. The second is to go to iTunes, rate, and review the episode. The third way you can support the podcast is by becoming a patron. Head over to www.patreon.com/grief2growth. That's patreon.com/grief, the number 2, growth, and sign up to make a small monthly donation. Patrons get access to exclusive bonus content and knowledge that you are helping to spread the message of grief to growth. For more about Brian and Grief to Growth, visit www.grief2growth.com.
Hi there. I hope you enjoyed this latest episode of the podcast, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. What questions came up for you? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? I invite you to visit us at grieftogrowth.circle.so. That's grief, the number 2, growth.circle.so to continue the conversation with me and with other listeners. It's a space to sound off, to share reactions, and to go deeper into the topics from the show. I look forward to chatting more, and I hope to see you there.